Greetings and welcome to this video on JavaScript interview questions and answers. My name is Michelle AI, and our focus today is on while and for loops in JS, a topic frequently discussed in front-end interviews. As we explore this subject, you will not only deepen your understanding of JavaScript, but also refine your skills for your next JavaScript interview. During the video, we'll pose a question for you to answer, followed by the correct response. We will give you 15 seconds to answer each question. Optionally, you can pause the video if you need more time. Although we will be focusing on interview responses, it's important to be familiar with the technical aspect of each topic. You can find detailed technical responses under the while and for loops category on our website at hellojavascript.info. So, let's get started with the first question. In simple terms, what are loops used for in JavaScript? Here is the interview response. Loops in JavaScript are used to execute a block of code repeatedly until a certain condition is met or a specified number of iterations have been completed. Let's move on to the next question. Explain how a while loop works in JavaScript. Here is the correct answer to this question. A while loop in JavaScript repeatedly executes a block of code as long as a specified condition remains true and stops when the condition becomes false. Let's look at the next question. What is the definition of an iteration in a JavaScript loop? This is the correct way to answer this question. An iteration in a JavaScript loop refers to each individual execution of the loop's body, typically corresponding to one cycle of the loop. Now, for the next question. Does a while loop require an explicit incrementer? This is the correct way to answer this question. A while loop does not require an explicit incrementer. However, it is crucial to ensure the loop condition eventually becomes false to avoid infinite loops. Let's move on to the next question. Are curly brackets required in a single-line loop body? Here is the correct response to this interview question. Curly brackets are not required for a single-line loop body in languages like C, C++, Java, or JavaScript. However, they improve readability and prevent errors. Let's look at the next question. What is the difference between a do-while and a while loop? Here is the response to this interview question. The main difference is that a do-while loop executes its body at least once before checking the condition. A while loop, on the other hand, only executes its loop body if the loop condition is initially true. Let's look at the next question. Can you explain how the do-while loop works in JavaScript? Here is the interview response. In JavaScript, a do-while loop executes the loop body once, then checks the condition. If true, the loop repeats. If false, it exits the loop. Now, for the next question. Explain how a for loop functions in JavaScript. Here is the correct answer to this question. The for loop defines an initial point, condition, and steps. The initial point runs once when entering the loop. Before each iteration, the condition is evaluated. The loop body repeats while the condition remains true. If false, the loop then exits before the next iteration. Let's look at the next question. In JavaScript, what is a for loop inline variable declaration? The correct interview response is: in JavaScript, an inline variable declaration in a for loop initializes the loop control variable directly within the loop statement, leaving it within the loop scope. Let's move on to the next question. Is it possible to skip or omit parts of the for loop settings? This is the correct way to answer this question. It is possible to skip any or all parts of the for loop in JavaScript. However, omitting all parts will create an infinite loop, and semicolons must still be included to avoid syntax errors. Let's move on to the next question. Can you stop a loop based on a specific condition in JavaScript? Here is the correct response to this interview question. In JavaScript, you can stop a loop based on a specific condition by placing a break statement inside an if block that evaluates the desired condition within the loop body. Let's look at the next question. In JavaScript, how does the continue directive work in a loop? Here is the response to this interview question. In JavaScript, the continue directive skips the current iteration of a loop and proceeds to the next. It doesn't stop the entire loop, just the current iteration. Let's look at the next question. What is the difference between the break statement and the continue directive? Here is the correct answer to this question. In JavaScript, the break statement terminates the entire loop, while the continue directive skips the current iteration and proceeds to the next iteration in the loop. Now, for the next question. What is a potential benefit of using the continue directive? This is the correct way to answer this question. In JavaScript, using the continue directive can potentially improve the performance of a loop by skipping unnecessary iterations. Let's move on to the next question. Can the continue or break directives be used with the shorthand ternary expression? This is the correct way to answer this question. No, continue and break directives cannot be used with the shorthand ternary expression, as they require proper statement context within a loop. Let's look at the next question. How do you break out of two nested for loops in JavaScript? The correct interview answer is: you can use a label to break out of two nested for loops, while the break directive targets the label to ensure that both loops halt. Let's move on to the next question. In JavaScript, can labels jump to an arbitrary place in your code? Here is the response to this interview question. In JavaScript, labels cannot jump to arbitrary places in your code. They are used with break and continue statements, specifically for loops. Let's look at the next question. What is the difference between the while and for loops in JavaScript? Here is the correct answer to this question. In JavaScript, while loops check a condition before execution, while for loops have an initialization, condition, and update expression within the loop statement. Let's move on to the next question. What is an infinite loop in JavaScript, and how can it be avoided? Here is the correct response to this interview question. An infinite loop is a loop that runs indefinitely without stopping. It can be avoided by ensuring that the loop's exit condition is met at some point. Let's look at the next question. What is a nested loop in JavaScript, and why would you use one? This is the correct way to answer this question. A nested loop in JavaScript refers to a loop that's located within another loop. It's commonly used to traverse and manipulate data that has a hierarchical structure, like multidimensional arrays. Now, for the next question. How do you create an infinite loop in JavaScript intentionally? Here is the interview response. You can create an infinite loop intentionally by omitting the loop's condition or providing a condition that is always true. Let's move on to the next question. What is the syntax for a for loop in JavaScript? This is the correct way to answer this question. The structure of a for loop consists of three components: initialization, a condition, and an iteration, enclosed in parentheses and followed by a code block. Now, for the final question. What is the syntax for the while loop in JavaScript? Here is the response to this interview question. In JavaScript, the syntax for a while loop consists of the keyword while, followed by a condition enclosed in parentheses, and then a block of code, or loop body, enclosed in curly braces. We've now come to the end of this video on while and for loops. We hope that you found it to be informative and valuable. Be sure to join us for the next video, where we'll take a closer look at the switch statement. Thank you for watching.